Welcome to the Live Well for Longer podcast, the podcast for people who want to learn the art and science of healthy aging and longevity. Join me, Sarah Liddle, a wellbeing science specialist and positive psychology practitioner, as I share the psychology and behaviors associated with longevity and quality of life. Let's begin. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. I'm so pleased you're here. I'm your host, Sarah Liddle. And today, oh my goodness, I was kind of in a little bit of indecision about what to share with you today because there were two topics that I was like, oof, these are both really, really good. Now, I will be sharing the second one next week, but today's topic is about growth versus depth. And the other topic that I couldn't decide whether to share today or not was all about creating a space in your home to age well. Like, how do we design our homes in order to age well? And I am by no means an expert on that. I'm not an architect. I am not a designer, but there are certain things that we do around the home that influence our health and happiness, or that we can do. So I'll save that for next week. And for this week, we are going to be discussing growth versus depth. And I'm really, really passionate about this because it's something that has been a constant thread throughout my life. We have these threads and they all weave together to make up our life, and each of our threads are different. So for me, I have threads around writing, sharing content, my love of learning. These are all threads and they are important parts of my life. And they create meaning, they create happiness. And growth versus depth is a thread. It's a thread in my life because for the longest time, I've struggled with this idea of, is it better to grow or is it better to aim for depth with things? Now, I recently just took a little bit of a sabbatical from Instagram and Facebook and all of that jazz, all of the social media. I've just hopped offline and I'm just having a break because honestly, I think it's vital for our mental health to take the social media breaks. But I'm having a break because I'm searching for depth. I'm wondering, where does depth lie in my life? And growth is that space where you're in a constant need to become better, to get more followers, to have more likes, to do more, to be a better mum, better human, to earn more money, to have more possessions. You know what growth is. It's the way that our entire society has established its cultural norms and rules, right? And so for me, I'm going, yes, growth is very important. Without growth, we decay. If you're not growing, then you are dying. So growth is important, but let's just talk about its place in the world. Let's talk about the place of depth in the world and why and how these topics relate to your health, to your happiness, and to aging well. So growth, where does it come from? It comes from cultural norms. It comes from our society that we live in. But we have to ask ourselves, when it comes to growth, whose interest do we have at heart here? So when it comes to growing and earning more money, getting a bigger house, doing more things, having more possessions, whose interest are we really serving? I guarantee you that having more possessions is only serving the consumerist economy that we are living in, this inconspicuous consumption that we all abide by unconsciously. But these things often don't serve us. Growth is important for our health and happiness, but it must come from things that give our life meaning and substance. It must come from things that add depth to our life, not just growth for growth's sake. One of the things we learn from people who are on their deathbed is not did they acquire heaps of things. They don't care about the stuff they acquired. They care about the experiences that they had, the people they loved. And the same is true, I think, for our life. It's important to do a life review to really understand, where are you putting your energy and effort, and is this in alignment with who you are and who you want to become? So, productivity for productivity's sake is the same as growth. Often we get caught up in this whirlwind idea that we must always be doing stuff, but nothing could be further from the truth. To age well, to live healthy, we need to learn to take a step back, to log off, and to just be in the moment. We need to learn to slow down. You know, stress is one of the biggest killers. It's one of the biggest contributing factors to a lot of these diseases that we have. And part of that, part of the cause of stress is that we have this idea that we must always be doing stuff. I guarantee you that at the end of each day, you probably feel like you haven't done enough. But this is something that we need to learn to free ourselves from. So, as a high achiever, type A, highly driven woman with three, I guess, four now degrees behind me, plus, I am always on the lookout for how to do more in less time. But I have come to the realization over the years, and I'm still working at how to make it possible, that doing more is not the answer and achieving is not the answer. When I was sitting in the big auditorium about to go up and gain my law degree, one of my first degrees, I sat there and I had spent 3 years studying law, and it was a turbulent time. 3 years studying law, 3 years earning my way to pay for the law degree because I couldn't get a student loan. One child who was just recently born, and here I was getting my law degree, and I just thought, this is not happiness. This is not what I had worked toward so hard for. But we put these things on pedestals. We put the end result on pedestals. When in reality, I should have appreciated the journey more to get that law degree. And I sacrificed my health at the time. I sacrificed a lot of things. And if I could go back and do it again, I would do it differently. But I've learned now, and I've moved into this phase of my life where I am actively trying to gain depth. So depth is things that give our life meaning, give our life a sense of purpose. And they may make no sense. You might not even be good at the thing that you find depth in, but you find depth in it. And that is the most important thing. Having a sense of meaning in life is one of the key essentials, pillars of Stoicism. Having meaning is deeply embedded in Stoicism, and sharing that meaning or purpose with others is another secondary pillar as well. So, how do we find depth in our life? Well, I'd like to ask you, what gives your life meaning? What feels purposeful in your life? For me, it's feeling this sense of serenity throughout my day, not feeling stressed. I feel like I'm living a deeply meaningful life when I can have space to breathe, have space to walk the dogs, or read a book, or whatever it might be. I feel a sense of meaning when I'm in connection with other people or in communities, or doing activities where I get lost in the flow. And the flow state has originated from Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and that is the flow state is that sense where you just lose yourself to the moment. And the things that we find deeply meaningful are the things where we lose ourselves in the moment. unlike productivity, unlike growth, depth is harder to measure. And I think this is one of the things that society kind of trips itself up on, is that we've created this economy, this culture where we have to measure everything. So we're constantly measuring our steps, our time, we're micromanaging what we're doing, we're double multitasking to get more done. And in reality, we end up with less done, we end up less happy, we end up more stressed, more burdened, and more dis-ease. But depth is hard because we don't measure depth the same way. Depth comes from measuring it from our heart, not our head. And I invite you to go back and listen to the podcast episode, Home Frequency. And that's where I talk about finding things that align with you, creating a life of alignment with your soul, with your heart. And the thing is, we can't measure depth, but we can feel it. We feel it. And I think this is one of the key things about creating a long and healthy life, is that it's about feeling it. It's about feeling your life. So there are three essential ingredients that I've found from the blue zones. And these all add up to depth. Okay. So we've talked about meaning, but we're also going to add some emphasis on these ingredients, because these ingredients help to create meaning. So in the blue zones, they choose quality over quantity. They are more likely to grow their own garden and have their own fruits and vegetables than buy it from the supermarket, because they are choosing quality over quantity. They're not wondering about how much time they have to invest in their gardens, but they are thinking about the joy of gardening and the joy of eating these delicious organic vegetables with their friends and families. So quality is an essential ingredient for a deeply meaningful life. Priorities. We are finite human beings. We're not going to be around forever, but we act as if we are. And so we have to learn to prioritize the things that really matter. And you can do this by tuning into your home frequency. You can do this by tuning into the things that really, really matter for you, the deeply meaningful things, and then prioritizing those things. So what are your priorities? I have a vision board. Well, it's a vision board in front of me right now. And on it, there's a cello, because I wanted to learn the cello. I haven't learned it yet. I haven't had the time, the space, the resources to invest in learning the cello. But I could say that is a reason why. But is it the truth? Really, if I wanted to learn the cello right now, I could. A lot of the time, we tell ourselves these stories about why we can't do things. But I deeply, deeply believe that we are resourceful. One of my favorite old-time gurus is Earl Nightingale. I remember him when I used to listen to CDs, and I would have him, as well as cassette tapes. I would have him plugged into my CD or my cassette tape, and I would walk around Lake Tarawera listening to Earl Nightingale lead the field. Oh my goodness, you have to listen to him. He's now on Spotify. He's long since passed, but he would say, similar to this quote, that it's not what happens to you, it's what you do about it. And in one of his stories, he shares about this couple who had moved to, I think they moved to California, and they were sitting in a diner, so retro, and they were discussing about how no one would give them a job. And he said they wanted someone to give them something, in this case, a job, but no one had ever taught them to think for themselves. Think. And this is true for anything that you're in. Think about Napoleon Hill's greatest book ever, Think and Grow Rich. To really create a life where we love, a life that we love, and to really define our priorities, we need to think. I don't believe you're stuck. I don't believe you don't know the way forward. These are stories you keep telling yourself. Just like how I tell myself the story of, I don't have the resources, the time to do the cello. Of course I do. I'm just telling myself these stories. And we have to learn to recognize these stories, to learn to recognize them so that we can break out of this old way of thinking and take charge of our life and do the things that deeply matter to us. Now, the last item we kind of touched on, but the third ingredient that Blue Zone people, centenarians and near-centenarians, embrace to live well, to age well, is they embrace this attitude of slowness. Slowness, how terrifying, right? How absolutely terrifying. But slowness, living a slow life is something that is so important for our happiness and our health. So that brings me to the end of today's podcast, and I apologize for my tardiness. I didn't get around to doing it last week. I've been so busy with a lot of things, but here I am, and I am hoping you enjoyed this episode, and I'm hoping to get back into the swing of things and to do a weekly episode. So thank you for showing up. Now I wonder for you, how or what are you going to embrace? What are you going to take away from today's episode? What are you going to action in your life? What are you going to think over? These are really important and big topics. And so take time to really think about what items resonate with you and how you can go running with them and bring them into your lives. All right. Thank you so much for listening in. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you on the next episode. As we conclude this Live Well for Longer podcast episode, we sincerely appreciate your presence on this journey. Your support fuels our mission, so remember to subscribe and leave your thoughts. And if you'd like to download a positive aging manifesto with 7 traits to age healthy and happy, then visit positiveaginginstitute.com/manifesto. Until next time, live a connected and kinetic life.